core modernization is such a stressful proposition for a lot of banks. Yeah. So what is SunTec's value add to here? What sets your core modernization program apart from your competitors?
Core modernization by its nature is going to be disruptive. Yeah, because you are essentially tinkering with the heart of the bank in a sense, right? And because current core systems are also managing a bit of the customer dimension, which I just spoke about in terms of how do they bring in centricity, which means whatever they do is directly going to disrupt customers as well, not it's the banks themselves, right? How do you reduce that disruption, mitigate that disruption? So by bringing in what we would call, like, let's say a SunTec or a SunTec equivalent layer, which essentially isolates what's happening in the core modernization by the transformation of the core itself from the customer facing piece of the bank, if I want to call it, by bringing the customer centricity first and then doing the modernization as a part of that. I'm not saying, you bring this entire piece in first and then look at the core modernization, but syncing that up so that your risk of customer disruption is very minimal is what we do very well. And apart from all the program management and doing this, because banks of course have to manage it, a very complex program, and we just a piece of it, I would say that agility of, for example, if I would take an example of just managing initially what I would call, let's say, delta fees, keeping the fees themselves in the core system, but just managing what I would call the reward part of it for an individual customer, looking at the relationship, and then step by step moving into it backwards while we keep hollowing out the core. That ability to look at use cases in an extremely granular manner and still bring in that value is what is unique to us.
There comes always the compliance question, and there's some complexity definitely in that. Yeah. There has been lots of discussion in the past year. For me, an important step in between is more embedded finance and embedded payments. So instead of offering the full game of banking as a service, you really move into these little bits and pieces and use microservices to enable your customers, your merchants, on really creating these volumes for you. And I think this is a really good example where technology is the main enabler to open up these business models that we haven't seen in the past.
How can SunTec's proposition enable these banks to find these revenue streams and effectively manage them better?
So we've now spoken amply of customer centricity and how it's important that a bank looks at it outside in rather than inside out, right? Now, banks, of course, are scared of losing revenue streams, right? I again go back to the same example I gave of an auto industry. You're buying a Mercedes. You're paying Mercedes the full value of the car, right? Mercedes, of course, parcels out pieces of this, if you would will, to the various manufacturers, the various downstream providers for them, right? If I look at a very similar example, by expanding what they're offering to their customers by working with their partners, right? Because there's a number of partners in this industry who can work with banks. Banks' unique advantage is the fact that they own the customer and they have the customer's trust. And there are a number of providers, let's say fintechs, for example, who are not in a position of having that customer base or having the customer's trust. But if they are able to work with banks, banks can increase what I would call their fee revenue significantly, simply by the fact that now your offer to your customers is expanded rapidly. You're taking the onus of delivering to the customer, but at the same time you are increasing your fees. So the revenue streams, the new business models which you spoke about, are simply by expanding what you can provide to your customer as they go through the life cycle events. Not just say, I give you a savings account, I give you a current account. In a life cycle event, there's so many things a customer needs. Yeah. Partnering, that's simple. That's the revenue stream which you're talking about.